The phone rang at 2:53 in the morning. In the pitch-deck apartment in Chicago, the sound cut straight through my spine. I bolted upright, heart pounding, instantly sensing something terrible had happened. When I saw the caller ID, Harper, my younger sister, the unease surged like a tidal wave. We weren't close. In fact, we'd barely spoken in the past 3 years. If Harper was calling at this hour, it meant either a disaster had happened, or worse, something I didn't dare imagine. I picked up with a trembling hand. "Hello?" Harper's sobbing voice broke through, jagged like torn fabric. "Olivia, it's Dad. He had a heart attack. They're not sure he'll make it." A punch to the gut would have been easier to take. I froze, then scrambled out of bed, mind spinning. "Where is he?" I asked, voice distorted. "St. Mary's, in Salem. They rushed him into the ER. Mom's there, but he keeps asking for you. He keeps calling your name," Harper choked out. I gripped the phone tighter, tears streaming before I even realized it. My father, Thomas Carter, was the only one in my family who had ever truly believed in me, encouraged me to chase my dreams. Now he needed me. How could I not go? Within 10 minutes, I had booked the earliest flight from Chicago to Portland and arranged a rental car to drive straight to Salem. I hastily threw a few clothes into a suitcase, mind reeling. Outside the window, the night sky seemed to swallow the city whole, dark, cold, and full of foreboding. I had to go. I had to get there before it was too late. The early morning flight felt like it lasted a century. I couldn't sleep, just sat there gripping a photo of my dad, the one I always kept on my desk. He was 62 this year, still healthy, playing tennis weekly, driving himself out fishing every weekend. How could it happen so suddenly? I dug into my bag, pulling out the letter he sent me 6 years ago, the day I left Salem to pursue my interior design career in Chicago. "Go, Olivia, you were born for more than this small town can ever give you." I bit my lip, regret burning in my throat. I'd been too busy to call, too busy to visit, too busy to do anything right. The plane landed at 8 o'clock. I rushed to the car rental counter, barely able to steady my frozen fingers on the steering wheel. Salem was only a 2-hour drive away, but with every minute ticking by, my fear bled heavier. I called Harper while driving. No answer. I called my mother, Linda Carter, and no answer. The silence was suffocating. Sweat chilled my forehead despite Oregon's brisk early spring air. When I pulled into the St. Mary's Hospital parking lot, my heart hammered so violently it felt like it might burst. I sprinted into the lobby, rushing to the front desk. "Thomas Carter, admitted last night for a heart attack. I need to know what room he's in," I nearly shouted. The nurse looked up, frowning slightly as she typed into the computer. "I'm sorry, there's no patient by that name admitted last night." I stared at her. "That's impossible. My sister, my family said he was here." The nurse checked again, patient but firm. "I'm certain. No Thomas Carter, not last night, not this morning." My legs buckled. The world around me faded, leaving only the thunderous pounding in my ears. Something was horribly wrong. I stumbled out of the hospital, scanning the parking lot for a familiar face. No Harper. No, Mom. No one. Just a cold, empty lot, and a terrifying realization slowly crystallizing in my mind. My father had never had a heart attack. They had lied. And if they could fabricate something this monstrous, then it wasn't out of love or longing. I froze for a few seconds, then slowly understood. In 3 weeks, I would turn 30. And on my birthday, I was set to inherit $7.5 million through a trust fund my grandfather, Malcolm Reynolds, had left for me. There was only one explanation for this sick charade. They wanted my money. I sat motionless on a stone bench outside St. Mary's Hospital, hands numb despite the rising sun. The wind whipped through the parking lot, carrying damp, cold gusts, scattering old flyers at my feet. I pulled out my phone again, calling my mother. Once, twice. No answer. Through heaven. Harper didn't pick up either. A car horn blared somewhere in the distance, making me flinch. I clenched my fists so hard that my nails dug into my palms, nearly drawing blood. If the hospital had no record of my father, there was only one possibility. He had never been admitted. And if that was true, then everything Harper and Mom had told me was a lie. I bit my lip hard, stuffed my phone back into my pocket, and rushed to the car. I couldn't waste another second, sitting there. Driving back home, I tore down the familiar streets of Salem. Roads and corners etched into my memory despite nearly 6 years away. But today, they felt different. Colder, emptier. When I turned onto the street leading to my childhood home, the first thing I saw was the line of luxury cars crowding the driveway. A brand new BMW, a white Range Rover, and, unmistakably, the black Mercedes belonging to Bernard Clark, the family's longtime attorney. A chill slithered down my spine. I parked along the curb, shut off the engine, and sat there, panting. Every cell in my body screamed, "Turn around! Leave now!" But I had given up everything to come back. I had to know the truth. I opened the door, stepped out, heels striking hard against the stone pathway. My hand clutched the strap of my purse like a weapon. The front door creaked open as I reached the steps. And there, standing right in the middle of the living room, wearing a navy sweater and casually holding a glass of whiskey, was my father, Thomas Carter. Alive, healthy, completely fine. Next to him, my mother, Linda, offered a polite smile to Bernard, while Harper lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone without a care. They all turned at once when they saw me. No one looked surprised, no one ran to hug me, no one even shed a single tear. "Olivia!" Mom called out, her voice sweet as frozen honey. "You're home! That's wonderful!" I stood frozen at the doorway, each word hitting me like a hammer blow. "Dad? Is he okay?" I croaked out. Dad set down his glass, adjusted his collar, and stepped toward me with a reassuring smile. A smile so fake I barely recognized it on his face. "Last night. It was all a misunderstanding, Olivia," he said, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. "It was just a minor blood pressure spike. Harper overreacted a bit." I shoved his hand away as if it burned. "You made it up," I said, my voice low but firm. "You tricked me into coming back." The room plunged into an uncomfortable silence. Mom rushed over, placing a hand over her heart as if it was shattering. "Olivia, don't say that. Your family needs you. We need to talk, like a family." I let out a bitter laugh, anger searing through me. "Oh, family? Family only needs me now that everything is falling apart, right?" Harper lowered her phone, arms crossed, eyes cold. Bernard cleared his throat and stepped forward, opening a thick briefcase. "Olivia," he began, his tone so professional it was almost a parody, "we merely want to discuss an investment opportunity, one that would greatly benefit everyone." I glared at him. "Investment?" I repeated, each syllable sharp as a blade. "You mean transferring my entire inheritance into the black hole called Walker Carter Developments, don't you?" Mom paled. Harper shot a glance at Bernard. "It's not who you think, Olivia," Mom rushed to explain. "It's about protecting our family's future." Dad growled. "You owe this family. We raised you, fed you, gave you the best education." "I owe?" I laughed, a raw, bitter sound that echoed through the room. "I built my life by myself. All you ever did was order, control, and now that I have a little success, you want to snatch it away." No one said anything else. Bernard's eyes stayed glued to the documents, almost willing me to sign. I took a step back, chest heaving. "I almost lives by it, so does my son. Perhaps that's why we nurture each other the way we do. I'm not signing anything today," I said, each word crisp like a knife slicing through air. "And I'm not as easy to fool as I was 6 years ago." Dad narrowed his eyes, his voice dropping to a steel edge. And if you don't cooperate, Olivia will find another way. I looked around the room, at the familiar faces now twisted into strangers, fueled by greed. And I swore to myself I would not let them steal another thing from me, not this time, not ever. I tightened my grip on my bag, pressing my lips together as if weighing my options. Fighting now would only isolate me further. I needed time. I needed information. And if my family wanted a submissive pawn, they were about to get exactly what they asked for. At least until I flipped their entire game. I forced a small, strained smile, feigning calm. "All right," I said, my voice softening artificially. "Let me look over what you've prepared. Give me a little time to think." Mom exhaled in relief. Harper exchanged a look with Dad. Bernard gave a slight nod, a razor-thin smile curling on his face. They thought they had won. Good. Let them believe it. I accepted the stack of papers Bernard handed me, letting my hands tremble ever so slightly, like a scared little girl burdened with family duty. But beneath that surface, another Olivia stirred, an Olivia who was no longer naive, no longer manipulable. That night, I feigned exhaustion from the long flight, asking to retire early to my old bedroom. The room, with its faded blue walls and oak bed, looked exactly as it had the day I left. But tonight, it would become my fortress. I locked the door, drew the curtains, and immediately pulled out my phone, connecting to the secure network I maintained for work. Almost by instinct, I texted the only person in town I could still trust. Margaret Simmons. "Margaret, I need some meat. Urgent. Where's safe?" Just 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Margaret's voice, rough but sharp, came through. "Old Doc, 10 o'clock tonight. Come alone. Make sure you're not followed." I replied briefly, then slipped out through the back door, taking a narrow path out toward the outskirts of town. When I reached the old dock, the wind from the Willamette River howled, carrying the scent of damp earth and wild grasses. Under the dim streetlight, Margaret's figure appeared, small, slightly hunched, but her eyes gleamed sharp as honed steel. She didn't ask questions, no pleasantries. "What stunt did they pull to drag you back here?" I recounted everything, the midnight call, the empty hospital, the inheritance trap they were laying. Margaret only nodded, as if she had expected this all along. "I had my suspicions," she said, voice low. "Carter real estate grew too fast these past 2 years. Too fast to be natural." I clenched my fists. "Do you have proof?" Margaret smirked. "No, enough for charges, but enough to start tracking. You'll need someone professional." I hesitated. A beat. Then sighed, decision made. "I'll call Dylan." Just saying his name made my heart ache a little. Dylan Brooks, my high school boyfriend, now a financial crimes investigator for the Oregon Department of Justice. We had drifted apart quietly when I moved to Chicago. "Still," he once said, "Olivia, if you ever leave, remember, you'll always have someone who believes in you completely." Maybe it was time to see if that promise still held. I texted a simple, coded message, one only he and I would understand. "Need a numbers check. Breakwater Cafe tomorrow night?" Less than a minute later, he replied, "I'll be there. Alone." The next day passed under the perfect disguise of a dutiful Olivia, shopping with Harper, lunch with Mom and Dad, listening to Bernard drone on about investment strategies. I nodded, smiled, took careful notes. But in my mind, I recorded every anomaly. Construction sites abandoned, no workers in sight. Investors, Bernard referenced, none with verifiable identities. Short-term loans with sky-high interest rates from shady financial sources. That night, at the Riverside Breakwater Cafe, Dylan sat waiting for me, sleeves rolled up, eyes steady and serious. Without needing small talk, I handed him a copy of the documents Bernard gave me, along with notes I had quietly compiled all day. Dylan skimmed through it in just a few minutes, then looked up, his eyes heavy. "Olivier, this isn't just a failed business." I gripped my coffee cup so tightly my knuckles turned white. "What do you mean?" He pushed the stack of papers back toward me. This is a Ponzi scheme. They take money from new investors to pay returns to earlier ones. If the cash flow stops, everything collapses. And from the looks of it, it's about to fall apart. The air around me seemed to freeze. So, my money, I stammered. Dylan nodded, never breaking eye contact. If you transfer your inheritance into this, you won't just lose everything. You could be legally implicated when it all comes crashing down. Rage surged inside me like a tornado. My father, my mother, Harper, Bernard. They were all willing to sacrifice me to save their rotting empire. I leaned back, taking a deep breath. Dylan, I said, my voice steady again, can you help me expose them? He stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. If you're ready to fight, I'll go all the way with you. I left Breakwater Cafe with my mind spinning, but my hands clenched tight with resolve. If they thought blood ties could chain me down, this time I would bury their greed with justice. That night, in my old room, I fired up my laptop, accessed my private secured network, and searched for a name my grandfather, Malcolm, once mentioned when I was little. Arthur Sloan. His personal lawyer, the one who had helped set up my trust fund. It took only 3 phone calls and a referral from Margaret to reach him. Arthur was now retired, living in a small town near Bend, Oregon. His voice was still warm, sharp. I knew this day would come, Arthur said after I explained the situation. Malcolm anticipated your family's recklessness. He instructed me to monitor things from a distance in case of coercion. My hand tightened around the phone. Arthur continued, if you need, I can trigger the emergency protection clause, but we'll need evidence. Are you ready, Olivia? Didn't hesitate for a second. I'm ready. The very next morning, I secretly met Dylan at an abandoned parking lot on the outskirts of town. In Dylan's hand was a thick file wrapped tightly in cardboard. He set it down on the hood of my car, looking me dead in the eye. They forged financial documents, faked profit reports, even set up multiple shell companies in Delaware to launder money. I bit my lip, fury boiling inside me. Can we prove it? Dylan nodded firmly. We can, but we need to build more. And fast. So I decided to go all in. With Arthur's introduction, I hired a private investigator, Sam Whitaker, a former financial crimes detective famous for digging out the dirtiest secrets. Sam didn't beat around the bush when he took the job. You'll find every dollar the Carter family has hidden. He smirked, his eyes cold as ice. In 2 days, Sam handed me the first report. They have at least 4 offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, Sam said, throwing a thick stack of documents onto Margaret's kitchen table. The money is funneled through 3 layers of shell companies before ending up in personal accounts. I scanned the asset list, beachfront villas, yachts, anonymous stakes in illegal investment funds. Every line cut deeper into the old trust I once had for them. My father, my mother, Harper, they had all turned their backs on me long ago. I had simply been too foolish to see it. That evening, under the weak yellow light in Margaret's kitchen, Dylan, Arthur, Sam, and I mapped out our plan. Arthur would prepare the full legal documentation. Dylan would leverage his industry contacts to reach the SEC and the FBI. Sam would continue tracking hidden assets and overseas money trails. You and me, I would be the key witness. I would expose every filthy trick my family had pulled, every scam they built, every dollar they stole from the people who trusted them most. The plan was finalized within 3 days. Every minute, I maintained the facade of obedient Olivia, dining with my parents, listening to Harper complain about the burden of running the company, nodding along as Bernard droned on about family unity. I endured it all, because I knew each fake smile today would be a slap in their faces tomorrow. On the 3rd day, Arthur called with the update. Everything's ready. Once you confirm, we'll file formal complaints with the FBI, the SEC, and the Department of Justice. I didn't waver. Do it. The night before the showdown, I sat alone on the roof, staring into the gray Salem sky. The lights from the Carter Development's buildings flickered in the distance, like predators waiting to strike. I clutched the old comb my grandfather once gave me and whispered, "I'll do what you wanted, Grandpa. I'll protect what's left." Far away, thunder rumbled, deep and heavy. The storm was coming, and this time, I would be the one steering it. That morning, the Carter house buzzed with an odd mix of nervous excitement. My father wore a charcoal suit, hair slicked back meticulously. Mom chose a pale cream dress, and even Harper had put effort into her makeup. Bernard arrived early, carrying his familiar black leather briefcase, surely packed with the destiny contract they had been preparing. I stood quietly at the top of the staircase, watching it all, my heart growing colder with every beat. Everything was falling into place exactly as planned. I walked down, wearing a navy blue suit, both strong and formal, and a faint smile, just enough to keep suspicion at bay. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Mom asked, her voice gentle but tinged with impatience. "I am," I answered lightly, as if I were about to sign papers for a condo purchase rather than surrender my entire life's inheritance. Bernard opened his briefcase, spreading the documents across the large dining table. The contracts were neatly stacked, a silver fountain pen placed at the top right corner, as if everything was merely waiting for my signature to end it all. Dad leaned against a chair, arms crossed, his gaze sharp as a blade. Harper sat cross-legged, lightly tapping her thigh, unable to hide her smug expression. "Mom?" Mom just stared at me, her eyes a strange mix of pleading and veiled threat. I stepped to the table, leisurely picking up the pen. Before I signed, I said, my voice calm but resonant, "I want to fully understand all the terms." Bernard nodded quickly. "Of course, Olivia, but rest assured everything is legally sound." I nodded, pretending to skim a few lines. Outside the window, at the end of the street, dark figures approached. Sleek black cars without license plates, men in cold gray suits moving like shadows. I set the pen down and smiled. "Wonderful, we're just waiting for a few more guests?" The room froze. "Guests?" Dad frowned. "Who?" Right then the doorbell rang. A short, sharp ring, as piercing as a gunshot. I turned my head, voice ringing out, "I'll get it." I walked to the door and threw it open, and their world collapsed in that very moment. Standing there was Special Agent Sarah Milton from the FBI, dressed in a black coat, holding a search warrant. Beside her stood representatives from the SEC and two state police officers in uniform. Behind them, Dylan and Arthur entered quietly, their expressions cold as stone. "Thomas Carter," Agent Milton said in an icy voice, "you are under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud." The click of the handcuffs echoed, cold and sharp like a blade against stone. My father's face turned pale as he took a step back, but two agents quickly grabbed his arms and twisted them behind him. Mom screamed, "You're making a mistake. This is a misunderstanding." But an SEC officer approached, raising a document. "Linda Carter, your personal assets are hereby seized pending investigation." Harper screamed as two officers pulled her off the couch. Bernard jumped up, scrambling to gather documents, but Arthur signaled to the agents. "All documents on the table are evidence. Seize them immediately." One officer grabbed the leather briefcase, pulling out folders still warm with fresh ink. Bernard's face turned ashen. He didn't dare protest. I stood there, calm amid the chaos, like a warrior who had just dropped the final bomb on enemy headquarters. Dad spun around, glaring at me, the same eyes that once anchored me now burning with hatred. You did this?" I lifted my chin, my voice chillingly steady. "I'm simply returning to everyone what they sowed, Dad." An officer dragged him away, the sound of handcuffs clinking through the house that once echoed with my childhood laughter. Mom stumbled toward a chair, tears streaming, babbling, "Olivia, you don't understand. We're family." I looked at her, my gaze as cold as shattered glass. If this is family, why did I have to fake my own death to finally live? No one answered. Only the heavy footsteps of agents searching the house, the slam of cabinet doors, the rustle of seized documents. Harper was dragged outside, screaming profanities. Renard was cuffed, his face gray like ash. I stood still, watching as they were all loaded into police cars, the doors slamming shut with a thunderous bang. When the chaos finally settled, only Margaret and I stood in the empty front yard. Once a home, once a hell. Margaret gently squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, Olivia. You didn't just save yourself, you saved many others. I nodded, unable to speak. A strong gust of wind swept past, carrying the scent of old paper and rotting wood from the empty house. I knew there was no turning back now. But I also knew, at last, I had freed myself. 3 months after the Carter house was raided, the entire town of Salem was still reeling. Every newspaper, every local news station flashed bold, red headlines. The real estate empire crumbles. The fall of the Carter family. Every time I walked down the street, I could feel the heavy stares from neighbors, store clerks, familiar faces of the past. Not looks of hostility, but stunned glances, tinged with something oddly like gratitude. Anyway, because the truth had finally come to light. The trial for my father, Thomas Carter, and my brother, Harper Carter, was held at the Marion County Courthouse, drawing hundreds of spectators. My father, in his wrinkled orange jumpsuit, could no longer maintain his once commanding presence. His face was gaunt, his graying hair disheveled, and his eyes dull like dying embers. When he stood before the judge, he still tried to justify himself. Everything I did for my family, for the Carter legacy. But the judge was having none of it. You betrayed the trust of hundreds. You used family as a shield for selfish ambition and blatant fraud. The gavel struck the bench sharply, leaving no room for further defense. Thomas Carter was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison for securities fraud, international money laundering, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Harper fared no better. The evidence Dylan and Sam collected revealed that Harper not only helped conceal dirty money, but also embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund his lavish lifestyle. He kept his head bowed throughout the trial, silent. When the sentence, 18 years in prison, was read aloud, Harper simply closed his eyes, letting the tears silently trail down his pale cheeks. And my mother and Harper's sister? They chose to cooperate with authorities from the moment they were arrested. My mother, Linda Carter, admitted to helping my father lure new investors, hosting extravagant parties to build trust, all in exchange for maintaining control of the family's so-called charitable foundation, which was actually a front for money laundering. Harper's sister participated in falsifying financial reports and transferring illegal assets. Baxel, but thanks to full disclosure, providing detailed internal documents, and agreeing to testify against my father and brother, my mother received 5 years of probation plus 18 months of suspended jail time. Harper's sister served only 9 months in jail and was barred from participating in any financial activities for 10 years. The Carter family, the once proud name of Salem, was now nothing more than an indelible stain. The Carter Development's office building was seized, its sign removed in the somber silence of those who once trusted them. All remaining assets, homes, land, bank accounts, were auctioned off to compensate the victims. And me, I inherited the ruins I never asked for. One late October afternoon, I sat in a small cafe at the end of the street, watching the hurried crowd outside the window, my heart heavy with nameless emotions. Dylan sat across from me, occasionally glancing over legal documents just delivered by the attorney. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice warm and low. I sipped my coffee, bitterness on my tongue. "Okay," or at least learning to be. Dylan nodded, his gaze softening. "Your father, he sent a message from prison." I looked up, surprised. "What did he say?" Just 3 words. "No forgiveness." I gave a bitter laugh, one of pain and release. Honestly, that's more comforting than I expected. Because for a long time now, I no longer needed their forgiveness to know right from wrong. I chose this path not for revenge, but for justice. For the families who lost everything. For myself, for the girl I once was, who was forced to believe that family love meant unconditional obedience. As I left the cafe that day, I knew I had truly closed an old chapter. Salem remained the same. The wind still howled, the scent of baked goods still lingered in the narrow alleys, but for me, it was now only a memory. Memory I could look back on without guilt or resentment. Only peace remained, and one silent promise. I would never let anyone else decide my life again. When all the legal proceedings finally ended, I faced the most important decision of my life. The inheritance my grandfather left me, the money my family tried to steal through every means, now sat quietly in my bank account, heavy as a stone on my chest. $7.5 million, a number that could buy luxury homes, lavish vacations, or a carefree life without worry for tomorrow. But also a number soaked in blood, tears, and betrayal. I knew I couldn't live only for myself, and I knew exactly what I had to do. 3 months after the final trial, I officially founded Community Development Partners, a nonprofit organization dedicated to rebuilding the abandoned projects left behind by Carter Developments and assisting in restitution for the victims. I allocated nearly 70% of my inheritance to establish the Salem Restitution Fund. It wasn't just about money. It was a silent apology, a way to repair, even partially, the damage my family had caused. The launch ceremony was simple, held at the city's community center. No fine wine, no glittering evening gowns, just rows of folding chairs, faces etched with the pain of lost investments, and an Olivia Carter, without makeup, without expensive coats, standing on a small wooden stage, holding a microphone with steady hands. I am not here to seek forgiveness on behalf of my family, I said, my voice clear and strong, because some wounds will never fade. But I believe action can speak where words fail. The warm yellow light fell across faces listening intently. They continued. The Salem Restitution Fund will begin disbursement this month. Our goal is to return at least 80% of the original investments to every victim affected by Carter Developments. This is not charity, this is duty. No one clapped, no one cheered. There was only a heavy, solemn silence. But I didn't need their forgiveness. I only needed them to see action. Community Development Partners quickly went to work. The abandoned construction sites from the past 2 years were thoroughly inspected, reevaluated, and reopened with new contractors selected through a transparent public bidding process. The Riverside office building, once my father's dream project, was transformed into a small business support center, prioritizing residents of Salem who had lost their retirement investments. The abandoned apartment complex in the southern suburbs, where rusty steel frames once scarred the fields, was completed into affordable housing prioritized for veterans and low-income families. Every brick, every layer of mortar, every opening door was my silent promise to this land. One time, while I was inspecting the progress at the Riverside Community Project, an elderly man approached me. His hair was snowy white, his hands trembled on a cane, but his eyes shone brightly as he grasped my hand. My daughter lost all her savings because of Carter Developments, he said, his voice rough. Now, thanks to you, she has a home. Thank you, Olivia. I squeezed his hand, feeling warmth return after so many months of cold isolation. Each passing day, each completed project, I felt myself severing another chain to the past. Dylan stood by my side like a friend, a silent yet irreplaceable ally. Occasionally, he helped with internal audits, reviewing the financial processes of the fund to ensure not a single dollar was misused. Never repeat the mistakes of the previous generation, he often said, and I nodded, carving each word into my heart. Community Development Partners did not stop at Salem. The following year, we expanded into 3 neighboring towns, taking over similar abandoned projects, helping to revive communities nearly erased by greed and deceit. Many times, journalists asked me if I felt bitter, having to use my inheritance to fix others' mistakes. I simply smiled. Repairing the consequences isn't punishment, it's responsibility. And deep down, I knew this was the path my grandfather Malcolm had wanted me to walk. Not to preserve the Carter name, but to build something better from the ashes they left behind. When community development partners stabilized, I knew it was time to move forward. Salem would always be where I grew up and where I buried the last memories of a family that no longer existed as it once did. But my life could not remain tethered to the past. One March morning, I packed my suitcase and headed to the airport, once again setting out for what had once been my dream, London. The city greeted me with icy rain, silver gray buildings shrouded in mist, and the taste of freedom in every breath. And in. My former mentor and benefactor waited at Heathrow Airport. She didn't say much, just pulled me into a tight, slightly trembling hug. "Welcome home, Olivia," she whispered in my ear. No more words were needed. I knew I had truly returned. Within 2 months, Marion and I established Sloan & Carter Atelier, a sustainable fashion brand committed to using recycled materials and fair production practices. Gone were the glamorous collections chasing fleeting trends. Every design we created told a story of recovery, of rebirth, of finding oneself among broken pieces. Work filled my days from dawn until late night, but with every passing moment, I felt lighter. No one pushed me. No one commanded me. I chose to sketch before sunrise, chose to cut and sew in the studio deep into the night, chose to sign partnership contracts because I believed in sustainability, not because of flashy numbers. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. Dylan occasionally flew over to visit, always bringing small stories from Salem about new projects community development partners continue to launch. Between us, a deep friendship formed, stronger than any old relationship before. One early summer day, I received a handwritten letter, a rarity in today's digital world. It was from my mother. In the letter, she wrote about her new life, working part-time at a small flower shop, living simply in a modest rented apartment in the suburbs. No more glamorous parties, no more the proud title of Mrs. Carter. Just Linda, a woman learning to survive on her own. "I know you don't need forgiveness," she wrote with trembling penmanship, "but I hope that someday I can redeem part of my mistakes." I reread the letter many times, feeling a complicated emotion stir within me. I hadn't forgotten the pain she caused, but the hatred had long since faded. I replied with a short letter. "If you are truly changing, I am willing to listen. Someday." Harper's sister also reached out via email. No long-winded explanations, no pleas. Poetic. I started working with an organization helping women reintegrate after prison. Maybe I've finally found something meaningful. Thank you for not giving up on justice. We didn't return to being the close sisters we once were. But within those few simple words, I sensed a small glimmer of hope, a fragment of the past slowly being cleansed, even if it was painful and slow. As for my father and Harper, I never received any messages. They remained incarcerated at the federal prison in Oregon after additional lawsuits related to embezzling investment funds. According to news reports, both continued blaming circumstances, never once admitting fault. I no longer hoped for change from them, nor did I need their recognition to define my own worth. One late autumn evening, I stood on the rooftop terrace of our London studio, watching the city lights flicker under the night sky. In my hands was a cup of hot tea, my heart full of peace. Marion stood beside me, gently patting my shoulder. "Olivia, you've come a very long way." I smiled, my gaze fixed on the soft glow along the horizon. "And finally, I'm on the right path. Not a path forced by family. Well, not a path fueled by hatred, but my own path, built on truth, integrity, and a desire to live kindly." A cold winter breeze swept by, carrying the scent of fallen leaves, night rain, and the rich flavor of freedom. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Inside me, after so many years, there was no burden left. Only one feeling remained. I had finally come home to myself. The story of Olivia Carter is not just a journey of exposing the truth and facing betrayal, but a testament to the power of integrity and making the right choices, even at the cost of loneliness and loss. From a victim exploited by her own family, Olivia rose to repair the damage others caused, building a new life founded on sustainable values and self respect. She reminds us that true freedom is not given, it must be earned through courage and perseverance. What are your thoughts on Olivia's journey and the choices she made? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, inspiring, real life stories about family and resilience.